a 3-year, $63 million deal, a source told our Chris Mortensen. Cam posted the following on social media about the Panthers' trade permission. Stop with the wordplay. I never asked for it. There is no dodging this one. I love the Panthers to death and will always love you guys. Please do not try and play me or manipulate the narrative and act like I wanted this. You forced me into this. Love. Dan Orlovsky back here with us. Max, I'll start with you. Who actually gives the Panthers a better shot of winning? Or Stephen A., let me start with you. Who gives the Panthers a better shot of winning the Super Bowl? Would you say Teddy Bridgewater or Cam?
Well, first of all, I don't even view the Carolina Panthers being in the Super Bowl equation. Let me be very, very clear about that. And this is Christian McCaffrey's team. It's no longer Cam Newton's team. Let's be clear about that. Having said all of that, I will tell you this. I do think that Cam Newton gives them a better shot than Teddy Bridgewater. Listen, I like Teddy Bridgewater as a person. I think that he's a good dude to have on any team. He's a great, great backup. I think he can start for various teams in the NFL, but it's by default because I don't think there's a whole bunch of great quarterbacks in the National Football League. Hell, I don't think there's a whole bunch of good quarterbacks in the National Football League, okay? As Max would talk about it, that middle-class version that John Elway has alluded to, you know, when he was talking about Brock Osweiler years ago, Teddy Bridgewater is an upgrade from that. I certainly would insult him in that regard. But despite the 5-0 record as a starter, he was relatively pedestrian. I mean, I'm looking at it here. He comes into the game when Drew Brees goes down against the Rams, a game in which they lost 27-9. He completes 56% of his passes that game. All right. Yes, he completed 70, 76, 76. But you're talking about dipping and dunking. 165 yards passing one day, 177 yards another, 193 another. You know, he had one 300-yard passing game, another 240 game. I mean, he didn't exactly blow you away by throwing for 300 or 400 yards or anything like that. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve his money. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to be a starter. But when I look at Teddy Bridgewater, I look at him as a relatively pedestrian quarterback who's not going to beat himself. I look at Cam Newton, when healthy, as a game changer. And to me, Super Bowl contenders have game changers. And that's where I'm looking at.
Yeah, I don't see Bridgewater as a game changer either. I see him maybe as a culture changer in Carolina. He may be more of the personality that they want on the top of the franchise. And also, let me say this about Bridgewater. For this upcoming season, you know, I've been a big Cam defender in the last year or so because I think people forgot about the kind of season he was having before he got injured the year before. He was maybe better than he'd ever been as a passer. And when you combine that with his other physical attributes, you go, wait a minute, this dude was once voted by his peers the best player in football over Brady, Rodgers, and everyone who, looking back at it, were still in their primes. He was the MVP. No one was even doubting that. Number one in the game. So then he had a season that was sort of similar to that, or was on his way to having that season, but he was better as a passer. So I thought, oh, look at this. Then he got hurt. And it turns out it's a catastrophic injury. He had to miss a season. So do I believe in Cam long-term after this season? Yes. But this upcoming season, usually when you have to take that amount of time off, you don't just hit the ground running coming back, particularly if you weren't the most accurate passer in the first place. So I'm not talking long-term for Carolina. I'm talking right now. Plus, Bridgewater is the kind of guy who's steady as she goes and as good as a stabilizing force in a franchise. Let me say this. He has certain things. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady or even Jimmy G, but he has certain similarities other than the kind of leadership stability that you like in a guy. Quick release, doesn't make mistakes. So that's what Tom Brady is nowadays. That's what Jimmy Garoppolo has been in the last couple of years. And you know what the thing is about those kind of quarterbacks? If you have good coaching and a good organization, you win a lot of games. I don't know if ultimately you win the Super Bowl. Mahomes, of course it was Mahomes, came back on Garoppolo, but he had a 10-point lead. Brady won a Super Bowl 13-3, the lowest scoring one ever, because quick release, don't make mistakes, steady as she goes personality in terms of the locker room. Bridgewater has those things in common with those guys, and I think in the immediate future is the better alternative.
Max, I've never heard anyone hate on a guy like you do Tom Brady and love on a guy like you do with Jimmy Garoppolo and compare them together so much.
I don't hate on Brady.
Listen, I think the reality of the situation is we can't make the assumption of Cam Newton being healthy. We have to assume that there is some form of a lack of 100% in his game right now. This is his third surgery in the last couple of years, second shoulder surgery. So we have to take it for what it is, that there's not necessarily a great amount of knowledge of where he stands with his health. If Cam Newton was completely healthy and never had those issues, then yes, it's a no-brainer that he's the better option. But their better option right now in 2020, and for Matt Rule and David Tepper, the new owner, is to move forward with Teddy Bridgewater. And Stephen A., I want to kind of talk about Teddy Bridgewater in the reality more than just maybe of an expectation or a narrative about him. He was an ascending quarterback, an ascending young quarterback 4 years ago in the NFL. And I remember being on the field in Detroit when we got hurt, when we heard news of that injury to Teddy Bridgewater's knee, and immediately we all said, man, that is a career ender, the way it sounds. And we all were like, he's never going to play again. So the fact that you get to bring Teddy Bridgewater into your organization and his intangibles are a big deal. The second thing, did you know in the last 21 games, Teddy Bridgewater's that he started, he's 16-5 in his last 21 games.
He's 22-12 overall, Dan.
When put on the field,
lifetime.
What is he overall?
22-12 overall. He's a winning quarterback. He wins twice as much as he loses almost.
So 16 wins in his last 21 starts. Also, in his last 35 starts, check this one out. He's played in one-possession games in 30 of those 35 games. You're talking about a guy that every single week is going to give you a chance to win the football game. So, no, he is not going to be the 300-yard passing quarterback every game, nor did they pay him to be that. They paid him right around the 20th ranked salary quarterback-wise in the NFL. So, for them to move forward and have Joe Brady as their play caller, which Teddy Bridgewater knows him and he knows Teddy Bridgewater and their offense in the 2020 season, this gives them the opportunity to move forward, restart the rebuild, and also keeps them in quarterback play for this season in the draft and also next season in the draft, which is a massive, massive deal. So Teddy Bridgewater is the better fit in Carolina right now over an unknown in Cam Newton.
Well, listen,
all right,
that's
we'll leave
all
it on
fair,
that note.
and I can't. Go ahead. It's all right.
Go, Stephen A.
I said that's all fair. I get where Max and Dan are coming from. But when we ask the question, of course, right now, Cam Newton, his health, a question mark. Teddy Bridgewater, 5-0 as a reserve, spelling for Drew Brees when he went down last year with his thumb injury. We get all of that. What I'm talking about is if you're looking at Teddy Bridgewater based on what you've seen at his best, and you're imagining Cam Newton from a health perspective at his best, who you rolling with. And I'm not talking about 4 years ago when Cam Newton was MVP. I'm simply saying look at the two quarterbacks with what they bring to the table. And I just believe that Cam Newton has the potential to be a game changer. But if I had to play it safe, of course I'm going to go with Teddy Bridgewater because the intangible that you pointed to, Dan, because of the fact that he's been 5-0 in New Orleans, because he seems to be younger, he doesn't have as much wear and tear on his body because Cam Newton, it's one thing to have an injury like Teddy Bridgewater had, as nasty as it may be. It's another thing to be beat up over a course of several years, the way that Cam Newton was, because he exposed himself and his body to that, to the violence, because he wanted to run with the football just as much as he wanted to throw it. That's all I'm talking about.
All right, and as Dan mentioned, Teddy Bridgewater won 16 of his last 21 starts, and in those games, he's only thrown multiple